This is called the Double Perch Candy Fly. And the reason I call it that is because I have another fly that's just called the Perch Candy Fly, where it uses just half the amount of the same tail material. This time I'm going to put it in both the front of the fly and the back. You're going to start out with a size 8 hook from Mustad. I love these hooks. You get 100 of them in a pack. I think they're like $12.99. It's a really good value. And you can use this hook for tons of different types of flies, whether they're on the surface or they're submerging. We're going to get a normal medium-sized bead, and then we're going to use this material called pearl core braid. And this one's from Hairline. It's in color tan. I also really like the color root beer, but what I'm doing here is using resin so that I'm going to put this resin on the tip of the core braid so that it won't unravel. You're going to harden it with a UV resin light. If you were to try and burn this or melt it, it would actually burn instead of melt. And so that's why I'm not using a flame, because it just kind of unravels and burns, because there's this thread in the middle there's an orange thread underneath that super nice looking translucent crystal flashy looking braid that's on top of the thread, and you don't want it to burn. So use resin, and it makes it look like a hot spot, which I like. Then you're going to take some dubbing. This is Ice Dub Orange, and you're going to tie it in right behind the eye of the hook. The reason I'm doing this is because the bead, unless you turn the bead around backwards, which you can do, it's going to have a gap between the eye of the hook, and you're going to see that thread dam, and I don't like that. So I'm just, in a way to just cover that up, I'm putting in a little ball of golden dubbing, which also can be kind of like a hot spot. Take your thread, put it all the way back to where the bend of the hook begins, and get the rest of your pearl core braid. Make sure that the butt end of it has the UV resin on it. Harden it so that it won't come unraveled. And then what you're going to do is you're going to actually secure that the same way that you did in the front end of the hook, but you're going to want to make sure that there's enough length. And right here I'm measuring it against the front side of the hook so that I've got it to be about the same. And you want to make sure that you tie it all the way in. And some people will be like, you're wasting material by tying in that extra. But I like to have more of a body so that there's some extra girth to the middle part of the fly. So you're going to secure that in with a couple of extra wraps. Then you're going to get your saddle hackle. For me, I don't have a huge preference on how big or small the saddle hackle is. I like it because it's really fuzzy. Tie that in before you put on the rest of this dubbing so that it seamlessly goes on top of it. And so you're going to make a dubbing noodle. Make sure that when you're doing this dubbing noodle, you're rotating it in just one direction. There's no wax that you need to put on it, nothing special. Just get a little bit of a pinch, tie it onto your line, and secure it in. Wrap it forwards towards the back end of that bead, and use as much as you need. It's okay if you put a little too much, but you don't really need that much either. Then you're going to wrap the hackle up the body of the fly, and you can make it to where it's a little more spaced out. You can make it where it's really, really dense. That's up to you. I kind of did it halfway here. And then you secure it off with a knot, maybe a couple of hard wraps to make sure those fibers aren't all over the place and jettisoning forward towards the bead. Again, this fly isn't really supposed to look like anything in particular. To me, it kind of is a blend between like a sandworm worm and a woolly bugger. It takes like my favorite things of both of those flies and combines it. And it's super effective. I've caught a ton of fish on this fly. If you stay tuned, I'll actually show you how to fish this and catch some bass on Town Lake. So I'm here on Town Lake, or Ladybird Lake, in Austin, Texas, and I'm using a 3-weight rod with floating line, casting right at the edge of all those weeds during the springtime, right below Barton Springs Pool. There's like a canal that leads up to it, and I'm right at the entrance of the canal. I was actually planning on going in there, but there's so many weeds that my prop to my boat kept on getting tangled. So I was just fishing the edge of the weeds just in front of the inlet, and there's a ton of people here. It doesn't matter. There are so many fish sitting on that edge waiting for stuff to fall in or waiting to ambush bait fish. And so I'll target a lot of places like that. And then here's another stretch of the river. This is farther down the river, right below the dam of Lake Austin, where it feeds into Ladybird Lake, so up next to Redbud Island. another one of my favorite places to fish on this awesome body of water. And I catch, I think, what is a super tiny perch. But it just kind of goes to show that this fly, it can catch a range of different species, and it can also catch really big fish. What usually happens is I'll cast and I'll wait anywhere between like 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, and maybe 5 or 8 1,000. And if I don't get a hit right away, I'm going to pull back and recast, because I've found that usually when I'm getting hit on this fly, it's while it's sinking, not after it's already hit the bottom. And if you just let it sit, a lot of times nothing happens either. You can retrieve it in with a couple of flicks, but I've found that even when you're stripping to bring it in, that doesn't always or even usually activate a bite. So I'll give it a couple of strips, but mainly it's really about getting as many casts in as possible and covering as much space as possible. And that's how I've found is the best way to maximize the number of fish you catch. What did you think? Would you use this fly to catch fish in the body of water that you fish most, or you think it's washed up and doesn't look like anything in particular? Either way, you might be right. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please give me a like and a subscribe, and have a great day.